Welcome to today's podcast. We're really excited to have Mr. TomTom.
Thank you. I love saying that. Mr. TomTom, okay.
If off-road recovery, engineering, and fabrication is your thing, you're going to love today's episode. Please welcome nuclear engineer TomTom from Matt's Off-Road Recovery. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me today.
Starting off, I've got a couple of different questions for you. This is one I've been looking forward to. And number one, also thank you for letting us host this episode in your shop. We are in TomTom Shop right now. You've had quite the journey, and it's been fun to get to know you on Matt's channel, and it's been a real blast. Tell me, how did you and Matt meet?
Matt and I met as mission companions in Illinois. We were both serving missions for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We both served in central Illinois. It was called the Illinois Peoria Mission, and we were assigned to work with each other for a month. And we just became super good friends, and that friendship has lasted our whole lives.
That's awesome. That's really, really cool. And so obviously you guys have maintained contact throughout the years?
Yeah, and I give Matt most of the credit for that. Matt is super good at networking and keeping in touch with hundreds of different people. He'll just call you out of the blue when he's on a drive and just chat with you for a few minutes about stuff that he's got going on.
Yeah.
And he's just always been good at that.
Okay, so you guys are missionaries. Fast forward, then I know that you were living in eastern Idaho and you were working for INL. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. I work for Idaho National Laboratory. I say work. I don't work there currently. I worked for them for 16 years. Great experience. Met tons of cool people there. Matt even came up through there a few times to visit, and we did stuff together.
And I've driven by there a couple of times because we live in Burley, and I love going through just that nice long loop and driving past the laboratories is really, really cool. The question that I had was, you were not a nuclear physicist, you were a nuclear engineer. What's the difference between those two?
A nuclear physicist is going to be just really oriented towards the physics of what's going on in a reactor core. And a nuclear engineer is involved in everything else, all of the building of the structure, how you're harvesting the energy, cooling the plant, processing fuel, all the other aspects of it. So the physicist is really going to focus on, the nuclear reaction going on the core of the reactor, and the engineering is all the other things associated.
So you get to build the cool stuff that makes it work.
Yeah, make the whole plant.
So what got you to that point? Did you know at a young age you wanted to do something in that line of work, or what? Tell us that story, how that all came to be.
Yeah, it was a very roundabout, ponderous path that I took. It was not like, this is what I want to be when I grow up. I always liked the sciences in school. I liked math. I liked physics. One of my favorite classes in all of high school was physics. I had a really cool teacher. And at some point along my journey, I decided I'm going into business. And I took multiple classes in college focusing on a business major. And I really didn't enjoy it. I wasn't just finding the joy that I had in these other classes. And I finally decided, I'm just going to go do my favorite thing in school, and then later I'll figure out how to make a living doing that. And so I decided I'm going to go get a degree in physics, because physics was my favorite class. And so I did that. I spent years, I bounced around to different schools. I would always just go to school where I was living. So I went to junior colleges, I went to school at ASU, I went to school up in Utah, and finally settled down when I found my wife and we were dating. I locked in and stayed at one place long enough to finish a degree. And I got a degree in physics. And while I was there, I found that they had a nuclear engineering department. And I got to know those people. And I always loved welding and fabrication. And they needed things done. They needed students that could build things and use them in the reactor that they have on their campus. And so it was a great fit. And I got a job working for them while I was going to school, and finished a nuclear engineering degree, a master's degree.
So how old were you when you graduated, and then how old were you when you started working at your last job?
I think I was 25 when I finished a master's degree in nuclear engineering.
That sounds like a very difficult thing.
Yeah, it was. I'm not going to pretend that was easy in any way, but I really enjoyed it, and that made it easier.
Yeah, that's really cool. In nuclear engineering, you have very tight tolerances. Precision is very, very important to that. What is, I guess, of the things that you can talk about, which one of your favorite projects that had to be really precise?
That's a good question. It's funny. Some things need to be precise, and there's a lot of things that just don't. And so I like to apply precision where it's needed, and then not when you don't need it. If you try to make everything too precise, you waste a lot of time and energy and effort in doing that. One of the things I was building when I first started at Idaho National Laboratory was a grapple that would latch onto these shipments of spent nuclear fuel, and it would pick them up and pull them into this hot cell facility. It's a room where people can't enter. It has 5 or 6 foot thick concrete walls, leaded glass windows to look into it, and it's all done with remote operated arms and devices. And so this grapple had to like lock onto a container, lift it up, and move it over by a window so that they could work on it. And there were parts in there that had to slide and move and be really tight. And then there was a lot of pieces that just didn't really matter. So I liked applying the precision where I needed it, and then leaving everything else as loose as I could to make it easy to fabricate. And I felt like the fabrication shop liked me as an engineer because they're like, oh, he's not over prescribing this precision where it's not necessary. And so I got along really good with the guys in the fab shop, and we became really good friends.
That's rare, because so many times there's a real disconnect between the engineering department and the fabrication department.
Oh, yeah.
Did you find yourself as kind of like the liaison between the two a lot?
Often. They really liked working with me, and sometimes they would bring me in to work with other engineers. So I could kind of be like, okay, I've talked to this guy, and here's what he wants, and if you have other ideas about how to make it, let's talk about those, and we would figure things out together.
It's kind of where the rubber meets the road, the practical application, and making sure that it works on paper, it works in real life, and
it's not too difficult to fabricate.
Yeah.
So at what point did you start finding a passion in, I guess, off-roading? Have you been a car guy? Like, tell us a little history about that.
So it's funny, Matt actually got me into fabrication. When we were mission companions, I had never done any like fab shop work. I'd never done any welding. And he was talking to me about welding and the different types of welding. And I was fascinated by it. You know, we're walking around together all day long, trying to get people to listen to us. And this is the stuff we would talk about in between.
Yeah.
And I just became fascinated with welding. And I decided when I went home, I was going to become a welder. And I did. I took one class at Mesa Community College on welding. I learned how to stick weld, and I learned how to gas weld with like a oxygen acetylene torch. And that started a huge passion for me of welding and fabrication. And that actually, I was a fabricator before I was ever an engineer. So I approached engineering with a fabrication background. And that was a really good thing for me.
Oh yeah, I imagine so, especially. Now, another question too is, what's your favorite kind of welding?
MIG is just so quick and easy that I go to that all the time. Just because the machine's set up and ready and run all the time, I can just grab it and go to work. But I really love TIG welding for its precision. And I'm not an incredible TIG welder. I would call myself a really okay TIG welder. But I love the variety of stuff it can do. You can weld almost anything with a TIG machine. And it's just incredibly precise and accurate.
Yeah.
So,
I love how just beautifully done stainless and aluminum parts, good TIG. Yeah.
They're a work of art.
Yeah, they are. They really are. That's the artisan level. It's fun to watch.
Yes.
So what were some of your first projects that you did on your own that you were excited about and proud about?
It's kind of funny. Like my very first welder was a AC, DC stick welder, arc welder. It was a Craftsman welder. It came from Sears. And it's funny, as soon as you get a welder, you do all these projects. You're like, I need to make a cart for my welder, and I need to make a rack for my steel. And you start welding up all this stuff. And then I'm like, if I didn't have this welder, would I even need a welder? Because all these projects are for the welder. So it's sort of this like circle of things that you start making for fabrication. So I remember building, stands for my friends' motorcycles and a car for the welder to roll around on. And those were really fun first projects. One on my truck, Dig Dug, one of the first things that I welded was a leaf spring shackle flip for the rear. I read Peterson's Off-Road magazine all the time, and I had every issue, and I subscribed to that for years. And my family was not into off-roading. They weren't into cars. They weren't into any of that. And most of what I had done was just reading. And so I love the articles about from Off-Road Design, Stephen Watson in Colorado. They're an awesome shop, and they were into square body Chevys. And everything he said and did, I was reading about and trying to copy, and I'm looking at the way they did their shackle flips, and I couldn't afford to buy one, so I welded up my own. And that was like an early project in my welding career that I was really proud of, and it's still on my truck. I'm still using it.
That's awesome.
So that kind of give you the bug to continue to build more cool stuff, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's really cool. So, but you're still building tools. You're still building fixtures. With a couple of the projects you were telling me for your other YouTube channel, TomTom Shop. What are some of the things that you're working on now?
So on that truck, one of the things I need to do right now is relocate the fuel tank to the bed so that I can put rock sliders along the sides, because the old Chevys had these saddled gas tanks that are in the wrong spot. So I'm like, okay, I got to build a fuel tank. I need to be able to bend the sheet metal up to be able to do that. So I need to build a brake. I need to build a sheet metal brake to be able to build that. So then on this table right here, I've got an idea to build a sheet metal brake that'll bolt onto the table, clamp onto it, and I can fold that up and do that. This year, my big project is going to be Dig Dug, taking it from a mildly okay off-road truck to something way more extreme that I can hang with the big boys like Matt and Rory.
I think you're modest. Like Dig Dug can do some pretty impressive stuff. So I think it's going to be really cool when you take it to the next level.
Yeah, it should be fun.
So Tom, as a nuclear engineer, I know that I wish that I had your brain. I'm sure we all do. What are some of the big things, like the top 3 things that you would say that you see people making mistakes on?
Well, I hate to tell people what to do, but I'm going to tell people what to do. And one of those things is just start, just dive in. I think a lot of times people are timid and they're like, oh, I can't do that. Or, what if I do it and it breaks? Well, if you never do it, you won't even know. So I feel like people need to get out there and try stuff. They need to try to weld and try to figure out how to do it. Try to build things and go use them and test them and try them. So I love trying to push people to be more active instead of less active. That's one of the things that I see people doing is when I hear a fan come up and say, hey, me and my son have this project that you guys motivated us to get out in the garage and start working on it. I just love that. I'm like, that is awesome. I hope everybody, has a project that they get into and are passionate about. From like a mistake standpoint, I talked about applying precision when you need it and not when you don't. And I see people on both sides of the aisle. Sometimes you see work that's just super sloppy and you're like, oh, that's scary. Like, who knows what's going to come apart on that. And then on the other end, there's people that are so precision focused that their rig never gets out of the garage, never gets to see any street time. I love David Freiberger talks about get it running, don't get it right. I think that's his saying. And you want to be able to enjoy your creation. So make it work and get to using it, and you can figure out the imperfections later. A big mistake, not in fabrication, that I see in off-roading or in automotive in general, is people not torquing their lug nuts.
I've done that.
I know we've all done that. Everybody doesn't torque their lug nuts sometimes, but man, I found so many lug nuts that people have used the impact wrench and cranked those things down to 600 foot-pounds, and it creates a ton of problems out on the trail because I can't get a tire off, and you can't change a tire with a normal wrench, or you're breaking wheel studs. So always torque your lug nuts. Mm-hmm.
And to the right, not too far.
Right. That's like, I'm torquing them. That's what when I tell him that, he's like, I'm torquing them. No, to the spec, 135 foot-pounds or 95 foot-pounds or whatever it is. If you torque your lug nuts, it saves you a ton of hassle in the future.
Yep. That way you don't lose one or lose the whole
The
thing.
wheel stays on, yeah. It's easy to remove, and someday you're going to remove it. Our wheels come on and off a lot in off-roading.
Yeah. It's funny because, I mean, I would have assumed that you were going to say like, prepping, everything so that you get this perfect weld. And it's just, I have a tendency to overanalyze and get into analysis paralysis and not start,
I definitely do that too.
Yeah.
Like I'm thinking about the last step, and I'm like, well, why don't I just begin on the first step, and we'll see how that.
Right.
When we get there, we'll figure out that piece.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then, hey, then you've got something done, and then it's moving forward. What's your favorite project that you're working on now?
I've got a few project vehicles that I'm working on. I have this little fleet of WJs that I'm starting to get excited about. I think the WJ is going to be the new XJ. XJs are awesome. They're a really fun vehicle. They were small and light and easy to work on, and they lasted a long time, and they were incredible off-roaders. And they've been snatched up and modified and destroyed, and they're becoming harder and harder to find. Like a good clean XJ might cost you $6,000 or $8,000.
And you remember when they were 500?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I bought one for $100, and my wife drove it for multiple years.
Wow.
And we had a great time in that. It was an 87. Drove it all over the place. I wish I had kept it. And yeah, now it's probably $5,000 if it's not in a junkyard somewhere.
Yeah.
But WJs still had a solid axle. They're a little bit wider, a little bit longer. The build quality, I feel like, was a little bit better because they're Grand. They're a Grand Cherokee. And they're still very affordable. They fit a V8 engine really well because they came with a 4.7 liter V8. And I've got 4 of them.
Yeah.
So my son's daily driving one was wrecked. We had one years ago that got wrecked, and I kept it for a parts vehicle. And then I picked up 2 that had bad transmissions. And I'm like, wow, I want to make a hardcore off-road rock crawler out of one, and then like a mild, more street-oriented rock crawler out of the other.
Yeah.
So that's something I'm really excited about. That's still really in the dream phase. I've got Dig Dug that'll be my main project this year. And this XJ right here that's on the rack behind us is going to be
the light show.
Yes. The light's going, yeah, it's reminding us it's over there.
Yeah.
Now I need to get running, so I'll have something to drive when Dig Dug is down.
Oh, cool.
So how was that transition from working at INL to then coming over and now you're famous, you're on TV a lot, you're on YouTube a lot. Tell us about that. Like, how was that? I would imagine that was a massive transition.
Yeah, it was a huge transition for me. It was a really big life change. My work was mostly in an office environment, mostly in a cubicle. I spent 8 or 9 hours a day working in that environment, and that was my whole life for like 16 years. And so to get thrown into an environment where every day is different, I wake up with a plan, and I usually don't do any of that. Like everything gets changed. They say, hey, we've already got a job. We're going to head out here. We need to load up these vehicles. And I'm thinking, we're going to put in the radiator on this vehicle, and we don't get to any of that. So everything's very chaotic and changes rapidly. But I've really enjoyed being out of the office. Everything is hands-on. You get to see progress happen really quickly. And that just doesn't happen in a big company that's got a lot of structure. Things move very slow. So I really like seeing things come together fast. And the days are really fun and exciting. So it's been a good transition.
That's awesome. Because it's never the same day. It's always different. And when there's a recovery, it's not, okay, we'll fit it into the schedule. Somebody might be in trouble. You need to go help. And time is of the essence, and it doesn't fit in a 9 to 5.
Right. It's pretty common for jobs to come in late in the day as it's getting dark. People have been stuck for a while, and now they're getting worried because night's coming. So you get a job at like 5 or 6, just when you should be going home or winding down for the day. Or on the weekends, jobs come in all the time because that's when people are out off-roading.
And you guys are getting a lot of tourists.
Oh, yeah.
So what's the strangest vehicle that you've recovered?
It was a Gambler 500 vehicle, which is a cool event that I really want to participate in sometime. We got a call for an off-road Ford Mustang on 33-inch tires
Whoa.
that had ripped out its front end. It wasn't welded to the frame structure very well, and just didn't survive. So we picked it up with a wrecker. The guy was really worried. It's funny, this vehicle's like been totally chopped up, wheel wells chopped out. This vehicle's completely modified in every aspect. It was pretty beat up. And we're getting ready to pick it up with the wrecker. I think it was actually the back end. And this guy's like, well, aren't those straps gonna rub the rear bumper? And we're like, yeah. And he's like, well, I can't have that. He was very concerned that we were going to like scratch or scuff this Ford Mustang off-road thing.
How did you guys get around it? Was
We
it just
took
like,
off the bumper.
oh,
We removed the back bumper,
Wow.
lifted it up, and we towed him out backwards on the Tokerville Falls Trail for like
wow.
10 miles. That was a very unusual build, and he was with a group of people that just had the craziest vehicles you've ever seen. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. I need to be a part of it somehow.
that's awesome. Those gambler rigs are impressive, and they're not. There's no two of them that are the same.
Right.
And they're because if you're going to build a rock crawler, the platform you start with is
A Wrangler.
yeah.
It's something traditional.
Typically, yeah, depending on which platform you start with, will
Sure.
either make that transition to a rock crawler easier or harder. And I think in the gambler world, it's like, hey, no, don't even worry about that. What's the
Yeah.
weirdest, craziest, most difficult thing you can think of that typically is like a minivan,
Yeah.
or
Yeah, something totally non-traditional
Yep.
or something obscure that people are like, what even is that vehicle?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it just seems like a fun event that we're thinking of some ideas right now that we could use for a gambler vehicle.
Do you, so let's talk about, you're obviously with Matt's Off-Road Recovery. You have your YouTube channel, TomTom Shop, right?
Yes.
What are your, fast forward 2 or 3 years, what's your vision for TomTom Shop?
Well, my hope is to stay with Matt's Off-Road Recovery and keep building the awesome projects that they've got lined up. And there's a limitless number of those. I mean, we're thinking 5 and 6 builds ahead of time and collecting parts for stuff. But I want to keep doing what I love to do and what I'm passionate about here in TomTom Shop and just make videos of that. I love shop time. I love being in my shop. I love working on these vehicles, but I also love building tools that I can use in my shop to create these things. So I built press brakes, that CNC plasma table behind you, tube benders, all kinds of different things.
there's the tire changer too. Yeah.
Some cool things you've built.
Yeah, I want to keep doing that. I have ideas for this space to build a big mezzanine and storage up there and make it have a boom that'll stick out and pull engines and move things around in here. So building out my shop to making it something that's just incredibly capable is a goal of mine, in addition to the off-road vehicles that I want to build.
That's way cool. Oh, that's awesome. So with what you're doing with Matt's Off-Road Recovery, you guys do a lot of recoveries. You guys are finding lots of different vehicles that are in different states of despair and disarray and maybe even scattered. What has been, I guess, what are some things that you've observed in the engineering aspect of just in off-road recovery that you've seen evolve?
The equipment just keeps getting better and better, and you guys know that because you're involved in that. I know you're always looking to improve your products, but they really do. Years ago, 3/8-inch steel winch cable was the bread and butter of off-road recovery. I mean, if you needed to get somebody out, you unspooled your winch, and that came with all of the difficulties of using that product. The wire splinters. It was hard to unspool. It was hard to respool. It was easy to kink and ruin. And so synthetic rope made the off-road recovery industry just 10 times easier. It's just so much easier to unspool a synthetic rope. And people talk about, how long do they last, or will they abrade, or will it get cut? And I'm just not seeing it. Like the products just hold up incredibly well. They have a very long life. We can put 10 or 15 years worth of normal wear and tear on some equipment in a year. because of the volume of use that we get. We're just doing so many recoveries that we can really put this stuff through its paces. So we've kind of become a test bed for these products, and they're holding up incredibly well. So the synthetic winch lines are amazing. The soft shackle is an incredible product that just makes it easy to attach all over the place. It also gets steel or metal out of the system, which could become a projectile, so that's made things even safer. I know that the Kinetic recovery ropes have been around for a long time, but it seems like their popularity has really taken off. And that's just an amazing product that can do a lot of different things.
Like what's been interesting is just seeing how the evolution from steel cable and hooks and going to polymers in these fibers, UHMWPE, and it all started with industrial fishing and the shipping and naval, military and naval applications. And it's interesting to see there's a lot of pushback when it entered that industry, and then it received another set of pushback when it entered the off-road community, because there's a separation there. And there's a few people that work at the shipyards that also like rock crawling, but that's a very small group of people. And so what I think is interesting is that there's always a little bit of a trade-off in engineering. You've got, for instance, the steel cable can last a long time and can handle UV forever, right? If you have it in the perfect, and that's the challenge of engineering. If you have the perfect situation, then it always works, right? But in off-road recovery, it's never perfect.
No, there's compromises all the time in any product that you're designing.
Right, and with going from steel cable to synthetic winch line, you're not going to get the overall lifetime out of it, but the engineering and how it fails makes everything so much safer. So that's one of the things that I've been just blown away to see how it's being adopted, especially with you guys. And I sit at my desk and I'm working on different things, and then I watch one of your guys' videos, like, I never thought of that.
Yeah, Matt's pretty creative in his rigging strategies, and so that is another way we learn, is by trying new things. And he's very willing to try new things. You talked about how things have transitioned into this industry slowly, and I think that's just because people like what they know and they're familiar with, and they're slow to embrace new ideas and change. But what we're seeing right now in the industry isn't going away. These synthetic ropes are here to stay. The advantages are huge, and you're right, there are some disadvantages. They won't handle the UV, but if you look at that rope as a replacement item every 5 or 10 years, then you'll get much more satisfaction out of using this synthetic rope that whole time.
What have you seen, like using the Yankum products and the Kinetic ropes? What have you seen has been the biggest difference for you? Is it speed, safety? Talk about that.
One of the things is quality. When we buy a Yankum product, we know what we're getting. The quality control is there, so I know that every time I'm getting the same product. We go through product. We're continuously replacing things as we wear them out and we use them up. And what we get from you guys is consistently excellent quality. And so that's one of the things that we really like. We also love the versatility. Matt is kind of a minimalist when it comes to off-road recovery. And he's not doing that, he is doing that intentionally. He likes to run a very light vehicle, and that's because he operates in the sand a lot of times. And so weight is a huge enemy. So we bring tools that have a wide variety of different uses, and we figure out how to get things done with what we have on the vehicle. And we find that the product that we're getting from you is incredibly versatile. We can do a ton of different stuff with just a few pieces. And so that is just a kit that works for us. There's a lot of specialized equipment out there that can do one thing. And if we went and bought all of that and carried in our rig, we'd have an extra 1,000 pounds of weight and stuff flopping around in the back.
Well, there's a lot of recovery specialists, experts, off-road, on-road that we work with, and when we see the list of things that they need and carry and use, now everybody's different. I'm not going to say you know, and hey, you know, to be prepared with every specialized tool is important depending on what the application is. But I've seen that where they've got a lot of weight in their vehicle, and to be able to remove metal to just go fully synthetic, because we get asked that question a lot. It's like, okay, why would I go for a soft shackle that's not going to last as long and is not as durable, and also cost twice as much as a hard shackle?
Oh, it's a no-brainer for me.
For you, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah,
right?
I've used it enough that I'm like, oh, I wouldn't even consider. Like, so if I was to replace a soft shackle with something else, I'd need like 8 different products, and they would weigh 30 times more. You know, I can stick a soft shackle way back underneath somewhere that these other products won't get to. You know, I'll be bending or kinking ropes or rubbing across other stuff. The soft shackle will bend nicely around whatever is in your way, and it won't hurt that item. And they're incredibly tough. It doesn't rip or break. We have broken them, and we generally look at what we're doing and we're like, oh yeah,
that makes sense. That's a
on
sharp
us.
edge.
Hell was dumb.
Yeah.
But they're incredibly tough and incredibly versatile. So if you were going to buy something that would replace a soft shackle, I feel like you'd spend 3 times as much, because you'd have a whole handful of different products.
And we're in an industry of, it's dangerous, right? I mean, every recovery that you do is dangerous. You're dealing with very heavy objects that are moving and going in different directions. The safety is a huge thing too, just removing all of that metal, because you never know what can happen.
Yeah, there's giant forces involved here, and the energy is stored in a way that if it releases fast and in the wrong way, somebody can really get hurt. I've seen multiple failures in the field. We've broken multiple winch lines and some soft shackles, and I'm always impressed when that happens. Usually it's a little bit scary, like, okay, what just happened? But anymore, it doesn't freak our team out, because when these things break, they fall in a way, they fall to the ground dead, and there's not as much energy released in a violent way as you would expect. When a static rope breaks, it's not shooting things. There's not chunks of metal in the system. You know, the rope might pile up at one end of the vehicle or the other, but I'm never like, oh, it's a good thing nobody was there. I realize that if somebody was there, they might have got slapped by a rope, but there's nothing incredibly violent about that failure. And so I love the safety that comes with using a soft shackle and a synthetic rope.
Yeah,
That's just a great system.
Yeah. But and there's differentiations too. I mean, there's the kinetic rope versus the winch line. And winch lines, yeah, they're static. They don't store
much energy.
They still can if you get up to absolute max peak loads and they fail. And a lot of times, and that's like a brand new rope that doesn't have any fibers. But if you've gotten halfway through it, it's a different story. If it's been worn down, then they behave differently. And every situation is different. Always safety. You always want to stay away from them.
Right. We stay we stand in places that are more safe. We rig it in a safe way, and we're concerned about, you know, making sure that these vehicles move where we want them to. But I don't have to be overly concerned about something bizarre happening, because when I see the failure, I'm like, okay, that failed in a way that was safe and predictable, and nobody got hurt.
When you're doing recoveries, I mean, it's never the same thing. I mean, how often are you, that's the main question. How often is it just a straightforward, the exact same recovery as it was the time before?
Very rarely. I mean, there are types of recoveries that we do a lot of. We do a lot of pull somebody out of the sand in a straight line. But we do a lot of crazy stuff that you're like, oh man, I've never seen anything like this. You know, I've got a vehicle on a sharp edge that's laying on its side. I have to tip it over. I have to spin it around. You know, I have to get it back on its wheels or pull it onto a trailer. It's always something new. Sometimes you have things around you that you can use to your advantage, like a tree or a rock. Sometimes you're on barren ground and you've got nothing. And so you're using the vehicles and the winches that you have to do all the work.
That's one of the things, like with the winch ring that we're doing, is just creating options.
Yes.
And it's so funny because, you know, there's a lot of people that are just hung up on friction, right? So these are low friction rings, but when you consider the friction comparison to pulleys have friction, Everything has friction in it. Ours has the most. Is it hurting the rope? No. Is there, and that's what's so funny about winch, and within the parameters that we suggest people using it. I mean, if you take it past that, yeah, you can kill the rope, you can do whatever, but that's the same thing for a kinetic rope, that's the same thing for a chain.
You can misuse any product and ruin it or do something dangerous.
And what we're trying to do is just create options so that then you can do multi-line pulls, you can do multi-lines through a ring, you can do multi-winches, and we're finding more and more just use cases and applications in different directions that they can be used. Have you, in your experience in use, what's been your take so far?
I love the winch ring, and what you guys have designed is kind of the next level winch ring. I think it's an incredible product because of its simplicity and its versatility. We keep those in all of our rigs. We keep very little product on our rig, and the rings are on there, and we use them and we love them. A lot of times we're just using them as a simple redirect, but to have the option to get multiple levels of multiplication through the pulley setup is just a great feature to have. Because when we're pulling somebody out that's really stuck in deep mud or something, you're pulling a vehicle in. Well, if I can hook up to a tree and now get 2 or 4 times as much force, that's a huge advantage. I think it'll take a while for people to fully embrace something that new and that novel in the industry, but I think people are quickly realizing that whatever these concerns are, they're unfounded. The product just works, and there's tons of people using it, and it's working. I have crunched numbers. Like I was like, I wonder if the friction is really a problem. And I did the math, and I'm like, oh, you could actually generate enough heat to really heat that ring up. But in real life, we don't ever see that. The rings are always cool to the touch. So there is heat being generated somewhere. Is it going into the rope? Is it going into the air? Does the ring just cool fast enough? I don't have the answer, but the ring's not getting hot. So that's not an issue.
Well, and it's also speed. So those are some different things that we've limited it. We would just say, okay, don't use it with a hydraulic winch. They can pull harder, they can pull faster typically. Using it with just an electric winch. And electric winches are usually not pulling nearly as hard as what they say they are. And with electric winches, a really good standard practice is to do 30-second pulls with them. And I know
tell you that's a good standard practice.
It's a good standard practice, but
follow. And we're still not having issues. I mean, we're pretty abusive to our equipment. We work this stuff super hard, and we'll sit there and hold those, and then do a hard pull and feel that winch ring, and like, this is not heating up. This just isn't an issue.
Yeah.
And I think as people try the stuff, they'll realize that some of their concerns were just non-issues.
Yeah.
And that'll come around. People will figure that out. And I think in time, they will fully embrace these as incredibly versatile, incredibly simple, and that's some of the beauty in them. In engineering, you can spend a lot of time creating a complex solution to a problem, and then you can spend a lot of extra time and create a simple solution to the problem. And I think that's the level you guys have got to with your engineering, is you're beyond the complex stage. You've created a product that's really simple and works. And that's awesome. That's like the highest level.
Well, we appreciate hearing that, and that feels good to hear. But I'll be the first person to admit too, like, there's no one tool that's perfect for every job.
Yeah.
Like if I'm hoisting something quickly overhead, I'm going to use a pulley. Like you need to. Right. Even a kinetic rope isn't good for overhead lifting. You've got to have things that are in the right place. That's something that we're always working on to try and educate your users, And I think that's what's awesome about your channel and Matt's channel, is that you guys are showing, these are the different ways that you can use it. There's the entertainment aspect of it, but you guys are also professionals. You guys have to be, careful and mindful of the environment and everything else that's going on there.
Yeah, we've loved the products. They're just working for us. And so we're going to keep using them.
That's awesome.
TomTom, we really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us and give a different perspective than maybe most people that we might talk to, just because of your background. And it means a lot that you're using our products and having a lot of luck. And like you said, you guys are using them a lot more than the average person. And I think you guys have some ropes that have, there's hundreds and hundreds of cycles on just, one rope.
I want to talk about cycle.
Yeah,
what's the definition of a cycle? Because a lot of people say that great big huge 5 mile an hour run bounce, that's a cycle. Yeah, it's a cycle. But even just going down a dirt road and just that.
Yeah, you might get 50 cycles if you're calling every bounce a cycle. We just did a job out of outside of Las Vegas, sort of in towards Lake Mead, where we drove 4 hours back in to get a vehicle that was disabled. It would run, but the rear axle, it was 2-wheel drive and the rear axle was tore up. So we hooked it up to a Yankum rope, and I spent maybe 4 or 5 hours driving 30 feet behind Matt with a Yankum rope in between us, just kind of white knuckling, trying to dodge the potholes. And you can't see much when you've only got 30 feet of visibility.
Yeah.
So it was a very long trip out. Yeah, what did we do to that rope? I know that it's still in service. It'll probably be in service for a long time. It'll probably be retired when the sheath is a little bit worn and dirty.
Yeah, we take a lot of pride in our quality and spend a lot of time on the QC side to make sure that everybody can feel safe, because like we said, it's a dangerous job. We appreciate what you do and who you are and what you know, and it means a lot that you're support what we do as well. So we thank you so much for all that.
We're excited to go wheeling with you again sometime and do this again. Thanks for letting us be here in your shop. This is a beautiful setting. Everything looks great on camera too, the future's bright. We've got lots of fun things to do, and if there's anything you ever need, let us know. We're excited to go rock crawling with you.
Awesome. Well, so am I. Thank you guys for coming, and anytime you're in the area, come by. You're welcome to use whatever I got.
Thank you.